Partner uses her phone timer to limit my talking to 5 minutes. Posted on r/bestofredditorupdates. Today was an interesting day. I visited a local cafe. And the kitchen staff hadn't cleaned the grill properly. I ended up with minor chemical burns to my mouth and lips. The police and ambulance were called. While relating this story to my GF of 3 months, she opened the timer on her phone and said, "You have 5 minutes," and started the timer. I was a bit stunned and lost for words in the moment, so I made some lame joke and laughed it off. But it's really bothering me that she was so dismissive. Any tips on setting a boundary in a healthy way? My gut reaction is that this is indefensible. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I'm sorry that your soon-to-be ex-GF isn't interested in you or your life. But we are. Tell us more about what happened. How did not cleaning the grill end up with police coming? I'm sorry this happened to you. Are you okay now? OP in response. While I was eating a sandwich, I felt a burning sensation in my tongue and lips. I thought it was chili initially. So I checked the menu to check the ingredients. No chili. The burning became more intense and it felt like my skin was blistering. So I told the waitress and the chef. I asked if they had recently been cleaning. The chef told me that he had just cleaned the grill with soda, but I could smell bleach. I told him this and he said he'd cleaned the floor with it. I immediately called the Poison Information Center and they told me to go to the emergency department. I wanted to take the contaminated food with me to the hospital. The owner appeared, took possession of it and refused to hand it over. I called the police. At this point, I was just concerned about my health but had to wait until the police and then the ambulance to turn up. It was about an hour in total. The staff rapidly recleaned the kitchen prior to the police arriving. The police said he didn't have to hand the food over. The paramedics deemed that it wasn't worth the trip to ED. It wasn't. The right side of my lips and tongue are burned as if I ate super hot pizza. At the end, the police said he'd let me take a photo of the food container. When he opened it, I immediately noticed that the smaller bit of the sandwich, which I had highlighted as the cause of the burning, was no longer there. Someone in the cafe had obviously thrown it away. I said this to the police, who are standing right next to me. The police said they have no evidence it was ever there, so they can't do anything about it. I asked them to look in the bin. They said no. Fuck, I was angry about that. The burning sensation stopped hours ago, but it still stings. The only reason I mentioned it to the cafe was because I needed to know what I had come in contact with and to make them aware so other customers weren't affected. TLDR, got a chem burn from contaminated food at a cafe. Police and paramedics were called. Cafe wouldn't give me the food to take with me to ED and then they threw away/hid the evidence. Commenter 2. There is a rhetoric that if you're exhausted by your partner's work rants, you each get a timer to rant. First, it's not usually just 5 minutes. Second, it's not a strict rule, sometimes you just need to vent. Third, it's agreed upon and discussed first. And incredibly rude to just unilaterally decide that's how the convo goes. Did she use the timer on herself? OP in response. Yes, I've heard this before, in relation to works rants. I was actually just retelling the story. I'm supposed to meet her mother tomorrow for the first time and SH mentioned that I shouldn't mention this incident. My first thought was, you're asking me to censor myself so your mother will like me, my GF is 45. And no, there was no discussion about this rule beforehand. It sounds reasonable if both agree on it. I'm struggling with the idea of whether a boundary needed to be set here. Surely you don't sit down with someone and say, pulling out a stopwatch and timing a conversation is unacceptable. Normally, I'd place one and see if it gets breached, but this seems beyond the pale. Commenter 3. I would not be dating a 45-year-old who is behaving like a college student afraid parents are going to cut them off. But that's just me. Why doesn't she want you to tell this story? It's not like you did anything wrong. OP in response. I assume it's because I involved the police. The cafe owner wouldn't hand over the contaminated food. The poison information line told me to go to the emergency department. I wanted the food because I thought the hospital might need to know what the substance was. Commenter 4. At this stage, it may be best to explore why she thinks that type of behavior is acceptable. Let her know that it's disrespectful and that you aren't going to censor yourself. If you get an apology, then maybe it could be worth sticking around. If you get any pushback or other negative reaction, then you should probably end it before it gets serious. If she has this kind of behavior now, it will only deepen as the relationship continues. Personally, I would end it and tell her that her behavior is the reason why it's over. OP in response. Thanks for your thoughtful and honest answer. I'm 50-50 on bothering to discuss or attempt to understand her thinking here. Upside is that I can practice asserting myself and give her an opportunity to walk it back. 100% agree with walking if she pushes back or becomes defensiveness. Commenter 5. This is really interesting and dismissive behavior that you would never expect from a loved one. She's taking you for granted. Red flag. OP in response. Yeah, I can't help but think what would need to happen to be allowed 10 minutes. Commenter 6. Imagine a lifetime of having to condense all your thoughts, stories, and conversations to 5 minutes before a blaring timer goes off. This is really rude behavior, and definitely shows a lack of empathy on her part. I would be pretty offended and upset if anyone did this to me, let alone my partner. OP in response. It feels pretty invalidating. Update, next day. I told her this morning that I was shocked that she pulled out a timer and felt unsupported and dismissed. She said she understood, without an apology, and followed with, but you were repeating yourself like my ex used to. I said, even if that were the case you had other options, for example, telling me. I only slept 4 hours and it would be too draining to meet her mother, so I decided to stay home and sleep. Her response was, what will I tell my mother? I said, tell her what happened, referencing her previous statement that I shouldn't mention it to her mother. Yes, I do talk quite a bit. I could talk about bikes and beer for hours, in like-minded company. And I'd have no issue with a mate telling me to STFU. But this was a strange and really stressful situation at the cafe. Being told to go to ED due to oral chem burns but having to stand around waiting for the police and ambulance to arrive while suspecting that the owner would destroy the evidence, which he did, was fucking crazy. So yes, there's no future with her. I'll be in my head counting words and measuring minutes while talking, which is no way to communicate. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I have a friend who really talks a lot. He goes on and on and on and on and on, and he won't stop until or unless I tell him to stop. It's just the way he is, and I've known him since we were little kids. I would never pull out a timer and tell him he has 5 minutes and then I'm going to stop listening. That's the most disrespectful and rude thing I could possibly do. TL/DR, your girlfriend is an insensitive asshole who doesn't care about your feelings and grossly disrespected you. She is the opposite of supportive and caring. Big red flag. Edited to add, my friend is married to someone who literally tells him to stop talking. She does it nicely and respectfully, though. After she feels he's reached whatever limit. Different limit depending on the situation, of course, she will lean in and politely put her hand on his arm and just sort of. Hey, that's a great story, but let's let Jim Bob talk for a bit now, while smiling and treating him kindly. My friend knows that he never stops talking, and he greatly appreciates that his wife does this. She is awesome, and has never treated him with disrespect or without patience and kindness. My friend really is an amazing person, and he's super cool. He just doesn't have that social awareness of when to stop. We're all pretty sure, him included, that he has some kind of autism or something, but has never been diagnosed. OP in response. Yeah, each person has a different limit for conversations depending on interest/topic/audience. I didn't even consider that I'd have to shorten a story about the ED, police, paramedics, chem burns. I'm self-aware enough to know that I'll be thinking, modifying, and monitoring whether what I say is important enough to keep someone else happy according to their rules. User deleted their account, so there will likely be no more updates.
Wired Abyss here. Yeah, that's a conversation that needs to happen before pulling the timer out. You can't just pull a timer out and say finish this conversation in 5 minutes. I would be furious if that happened. I wouldn't just laugh it off like he did. I would definitely just end the conversation immediately. I'd be pissed. But yeah, they need to have a sit-down conversation, and he has to really explain how he feels about her doing that to him.